we're focusing on staying the course to self-realization. And in your Kriya bulletin here, I came up with 5 points that will help. And so the first point there is one-pointedness, or the ability to stay focused and to avoid distractions. Now, self-realization occurs when we learn to disidentify with all those things which we are not, which is everything that we can see. Having grown up in a material world, when we're used to being attached to the senses and only identifying ourselves with that which we can see, self-realization is almost like a backwards way of looking at the world, just by habit. But in order to do it, the person needs to learn to pull within, which is why we practice meditation, and to stay established in the self with a capital S. And that takes consistent practice all the time. All right. First, you learn to practice it in meditation. You learn to turn within, to become the observer, the witnessing presence, and to see the thoughts floating through your mind, and to see your story as it's within your head, and to feel the emotions not as what you are, but as just simply something to observe. So in meditation, that's what's going on. Now, that's just intensive training for the rest of the day. All right. You can't just do that during meditation and then live your life still engrossed in the senses. When a yogi is acting in the world, they are perceiving what's there. They are hearing sounds, they are seeing things, they are feeling their emotions, experiencing their thoughts, but they always have this slight bit of detachment that they know that they are not these things. Okay? And then let's say a negative emotion comes up, or a mood comes up. Now the average person would just be overcome by that. And they would go with the mood, they would go with the agitation, and it would lead them down probably some kind of negative route. All right, so the yogi, first, can see this appearing within the mind, and if it's not going to be too terribly annoying or destructive, the yogi can just let it play out. Just watch it, observe it, let it happen. But you see, the difference there is the yogi is watching it happen. It's just occurring. All right? And then in time, as the consciousness gets clearer, then the yogi can decide, no, I don't want to experience that right now. Okay? So if something happens and it would typically make a person angry, they can have that little flash of anger and they can decide, all right, is this appropriate? Is it okay to express this? Or no, is this just simply some goofiness going on inside me that I have to change? And then when it comes up, they stop, they change it, and they go about their life. All right, so this one-pointedness. In meditation, it's staying established in the self as best as you can. And the meditation techniques are a point, an anchor point for the awareness so that you can be yourself, practice the technique, and let everything else fall away. Now, in daily living, one-pointedness means to always have within your mind, always have within your awareness this sense that you are not what you are perceiving. You are not the objects of perception. You are the witnessing presence. Okay? Now, sincerity, willingness to come to terms with your changeless nature, and to remain earnest in doing what needs done to stay established in the self. I was reading last night in the Bhagavad Gita, I believe it was the last chapter, about that when the yogi is finally coming to the end stages of his self-realization, that he or she is not identified with thoughts or emotions, and is not attached to thoughts or emotions. Okay? Now, we have the idea that in order for us to accomplish things, we have to struggle and we have to overcome great difficulties to achieve things, because that's what the storybooks are all about. That's what makes you a hero, right? Overcoming difficulties. Now, the difficulties the yogi has to overcome is much different. It's the attachment to thoughts and emotions. So when you do something, a lot of times we put in a mental and emotional investment in accomplishing a goal. We want something to occur, so we invest ourselves in it. And we do the actions that we need to do to make it happen. Now, what actually makes this happen is, first of all, the actions we take to make it happen, and more subtly, the intention behind it. The attachment of our thoughts and emotions to it doesn't do anything except for, if it doesn't work out, make us upset. Okay? Or if it does work out, make us elated and joyful. And then we try again, and if it doesn't work out, then we get even more upset because it worked the time before. So this is why in yoga practice, in life, having mental and emotional attachments to those things which you want to accomplish, that's just where suffering comes in, and you have a choice there. Coming to terms with the fact that you do not need to get emotionally and mentally invested in things. Coming to terms with the fact that you exist free of your story. That's what it means to be sincere. Because those things which get us in trouble, at least in my experience, are when we try to maintain our story above all else. Okay? When we try to uphold this definition of who we think we are, or what we should be doing within the world, or what other people will think of us, focusing on upholding that is where a lot of trouble comes in, rather than doing what is appropriate based on what the situation calls for. All right? That has nothing to do with your story. That has to do simply with being appropriate. So there's no personality there. It's just what needs to be done. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, adaptability. The ability to change thoughts and behaviors based on inner realizations, casting off what is no longer needed without attachment. Now, when we get first on this path, oftentimes, in the spiritual path, just in general, we have an idea of what God is, an idea of what it means to be awake, spiritually clear. And that's fine, because we need that to sort of get us going. All right. But if, as we go, we start to realize that God is not a cosmic person in the sky dispensing good and bad karma, and we start to realize that God is really a presence which is eternal and beyond the mind and beyond attachments and beyond what we think it is, if we are still tenaciously holding on to that idea of what we think God is, or what we think the divine is, that's going to put stumbling blocks in our way. Letting go of past attachments until you can remain established in, first of all, knowing that God is not a cosmic person, not an entity which dispenses negativity or goodness, that God is merely a presence, and then eventually you start to realize that God is really you, which means every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every action you do, that is God doing it through you. All right? You are a little condensation, a little, individualized unit, as Roy Davis would say, of God. And so you can't be omnipresent, because if you were omnipresent, you'd be aware of everyone's thoughts, everyone's memories, everyone's emotions all at once. And if that were the case, could you really function? Probably not. Okay? So that's why we have this little ego perspective here, so that we can play our role as an individualized unit of God within the world. And we grow